Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another movie discussion. This just being, where I just talk about movies that I've watched. And for today's episode, I'm talking about Blue Beetle. Obviously, this is going to be just a general, spoiler discussion and just talking as I kind of recap the story, just kind of share my thoughts about everything and the developments of the story and where everything kind of ended up going. But first and foremost, I'm going to give my general thoughts. I should also include, if you want to, you can bounce around to the different topics I'm going to cover because I'm going to do time code, so you can kind of jump around to the different topics you might want to hear me talk about. But first and foremost, just kind of giving my general thoughts. I really enjoyed the movie. I think it's great. I think this. I know going into this, people had already said like when the trailers came out, they're like, oh, it feels very much like a mid 2000s like superhero movie, whatever. Like I guess I get what they mean, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, whatever. But I think this movie proves itself of being something special. Because I think for some people they look at it as like, oh, it's just something generic, and maybe for some people they'll feel that way. But I didn't. I feel like it is a lot of fun. There is a lot of beautiful heart to it. Because it makes me think of a combination of Iron Man and Shazam, to be fair. So a little Shazamish because of you're a kid who gets superpowers, but it also focuses on the family element. And I think that's a very core and important part to Jaime's story in this story. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. His family is a family that you can get behind, that you can kind of be like, oh, because it makes you feel like you're a part of the family. At least, as someone, I'm not Mexican. I never grew up in a Mexican household, but it's it still makes you feel that warmth, that we got each other. We got you. You're and they are supportive and they help each other, and it's not even just this is the Reyes family, but it's also speaking about us as a Mexican family. I think that's so beautiful. But also, obviously, if you're not familiar with Blue Beetle, you're going to go into this being like, oh, it's a little Iron Man-esque, isn't it? It's yeah, I could definitely, especially with how popular Iron Man now is because of the MCU, of course, you're going to look at Blue Beetle oh, so he's kind of like Iron Man. It's yeah, sure, if that's the easiest way to explain it. I mean, I'm not well-versed in Blue Beetle. I have a little familiarity with Blue Beetle, specifically Jaime's Blue Beetle, just because of the Young Justice show, which I've only seen the first 2 seasons of, but I really like Jaime. I should also bring up because I know he was in one episode of Smallville as well. I only remember that because I went back a couple years and rewatched. But yeah, it's a Booster Goal and Jaime episode. But anyway, tangents and all that aside, but it's just a lot of fun, and it has a lot of heart to it, and I think that's what's going to make it stand the test of time. At least for me, it is a movie that I'm I want to rewatch it again because it's just a fun time. It's an enjoyable movie where you get to just kind of it's got a lot of, like I said, heart and charm to it. Maybe other people won't agree, but that's my stance on it. So that's kind of just once again, just kind of getting the general thoughts out of the way. And going forward, I am going to be jumping into spoilers as I'm kind of recapping and discussing the story. So if you have not seen the movie already, first and foremost, I highly recommend you go check it out. But also, go watch the movie and come back and listen to this. Like I said, I'm going to be going into spoilers, so I don't want to spoil anything for you. So you have been warned. So first and foremost, I think this movie does a really interesting job, first and foremost, of I guess this could have gone in a non-spoiler discussion, general thoughts, but the fact is this movie touches on, I think it'd be classified as gentrification of just Cord Industries has kind of built out this, and the city's expanding, even to the point, because the city's Edge City. I think that's the name of I think it's Edge City, but they given it a new name, because it's basically or maybe it's Edge City's the new name, and I think because it's, I'm blanking on it. It's a different city name, and that kind of ends up kind of representing the back and forth of how Cord Industries is building out and then expanding into these neighborhoods where it is kind of that. I feel like Gotham's the only place I really hear about it the most in the DC universe. I'm sure there are other places, but you hear it the most in Gotham of the separation between the rich and the poor, that the gap is so massive. And obviously it plays into real life too. There is that disparaging massive gap between the rich and the poor. they kind of have that represented here, because like Gotham is one of the only places I could think of where it's just like the rich are rich and the poor are really, really poor. Like that it's like such huge, massive sides of the spectrum. And when it comes to wealth, where it's just kind of like, right, that's them versus us until they decide they want our neighborhood, and then they'll buy this up and kind of kick us out where we have nowhere to go. That was kind of a point. Jaime's sister, Milagro, I hope I'm saying that right, was kind of bringing up pretty early on in the movie in that regard. So that was kind of interesting that they do tackle that, because sadly Jaime is very like dismissed like by Susan Sarandon's character of Victoria, when she was just like, and it's just that little bit of like a, like, for one, she kept getting Sanchez's name wrong. Or she just, I can't remember, I'm actually messing up now because I'm like, he only says his name like twice, but like I think she calls him Sanchez the entire time, but that's not actually his name, because she kept calling him the wrong name the entire movie, and I'm like, is Sanchez his actual name, or is it just? And I feel so bad. I did not know. Also, I did not know that actor was going to be in this. I have the cast up. Harvey. Oh God, I'm going to butcher it. I would say like Gillen, maybe might be how you pronounce it. I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I haven't seen the show. I've heard nothing but good things, but I know he's in What We Do in the Shadows. My first introduction to him was The Magicians. He was the map maker in The Magician. So I always get excited when I see him pop up. I had no idea he was going to be in this movie, but my point was like how dismissive Victoria can be, especially when she was firing Milagro and Jaime, she was just like, go. And then what did she say? She's like, underlay, like kind of like there's moments throughout the movie where you're just kind of like, and that seemed a little like unnecessary. Like it felt, I was like, nah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I felt a little twinge of racism in that. Like I said, maybe I'm super sensitive and I'm overreaching, but it just, I was like, that felt unnecessary. It just felt like you were kind of trying to make a point by being like underlay, so, but either way, but I think that's such a, I mean, because obviously all of that plays a key role in Jaime's story. Obviously, he's graduated from college. He's actually pre-law. He's come home, happy to see his family. But there's a big secret of, we can't afford the house anymore. Like, kind of think they're renting the house, and it's like we can't afford it anymore because like the rent's kind of going up by like triple, and like I think they had a business, but that sadly ended up having to be sold, and it's just like they're on hard times. But the Reyes family has that, hey, we're gonna get through this. Once again, it's like who we are as this family, but also once again we are like, we as a people, as a culture, we kind of get knocked down, we get back up, and we find our way through that struggle. And obviously that's such a, I think it's that hustle and that work ethic of like, okay, we make our place here, and no matter how much like this country may push us down, we won't back down, that we're going to stand up, we're going to push through those struggles and come out stronger for it, and it's such a passionate and very key and important part of his story. And like I said, I love his family, of how supportive they are, and just like how embarrassing they are. I love George Lopez's character, Rudy, because obviously he's part of that heart of the movie, but he's also like the comic relief. Like he's like, I mean, he's in the theater, like I was in, like everyone was laughing about, like, because he says the most outlandish stuff. He's also like, I look, because the trailer's kind of hinted at, he's like the conspiracy dude, that it's kind of like, okay, like, you got this balloon that says it's a boy because she got it, Milagro got it for him last second, as like when they were meeting him at the airport, and it's like, yeah, it might be a bug in there or something, so he just like tosses out the window. Like he's that guy. But the entire family is there to support Jaime when he tries to get a job at Cord Industries, which the movie makes references here and there to like the larger DC universe. Obviously, they reference Batman, Superman, and the Flash, specifically like, oh yeah, Central City where the Flash is, and Metropolis where Superman is. But the movie is designed in a way where it's like, yeah, the reference. So like this movie could go into the DC universe, which it's supposed to anyway, or at least Jaime is going to make the jump over character wise. I hope they do decide to like make the whole movie canonical. To me, it just feels right, because I want this family unit with Jaime in any future stories he may have in the DCU, But either way, there's even like a LexCorp build. I'm sure like that's why I want to watch it again. Cause I'm sure there's like little Easter eggs that I miss. I wish I could pause on to see everything. But obviously in this world, Ted Kord has already done the whole Blue Beetle thing, and I'm not, once again, that's why I brought up Jaime. Jaime's the only Blue Beetle I'm really familiar with. And even then, like I said, I'm not well versed, but I'm familiar enough with him. So I went into having some notions of understanding who Jaime is, or at least who his Blue Beetle is. And that maybe not necessarily Jaime as a character, as who he is pre-Blue Beetle and, you know, and that whole journey. So, but Ted had already done the whole vigilante thing and he disappeared. And his sister, played by Susan Sarandon, ended up taking over Kord Industries, and she's kind of taking it more down the weaponized route, which once again, kind of just the nature of how Blue Beetle operates, the suit and everything, and how that goes, and also like a corporation making weapons. I mean, I'm sure that's at the heart of a lot of companies in the DC and Marvel universes. So, you know, that isn't just like, oh, only Iron Man owns that. It's like, no, there are plenty of like arm manufacturers in those comic universes, respectively. But obviously, the point I'm making is like, yes, it feels a little Iron Man-ish, where it's like, right, like Stark Industries was very weaponized, Kord Industries is being heavily weaponized. In my head, I'm constantly comparing this character to other Marvel characters, and just in the feel that I get from it, like this character, and I think he's supposed to be a kind of like a DC parallel, not like a direct like parallel, like you know how some characters are like direct parallels of like, oh, maybe it was a DC character first and Marvel made their version, or Marvel made a version that DC made their version of something. Like it's not, but Jaime's on that same level as like a Spider-Man of like who they are, this young hero. Who's kind of like, there's a lot of parallels you can draw between Jaime Reyes and Peter Parker. And I'd make the argument between Jaime and Miles in that same capacity, but they're kind of in that same vein of heroes that they are. And so like it definitely gives you like those Spider-Man feel and vibes. Especially certain points later on in the movie, especially when it gave me like Raimi Spider-Man vibes when like the mask is like damaged later on his helmet. Like it definitely gave me, and you can see like part of his face beneath the helmet. I was like, that really gave me like Sam Raimi Spider-Man vibes. But even just like the, you know, testing stuff out and just being like freaking out because like this, I mean, obviously it's like a suit that you can't control. I mean, first and foremost, and I remember someone talking about this when the first trailer came out, they really liked the transformation because they're like, dude, it's so violent. It's not like an easy like, oh, this is great. It's like, no, it's painful. The thing literally latches onto your spine and embeds itself in you, which I love. Rudy being like, yeah, it went up his ass, and just and later on, like you have Jaime being like, no, it didn't go up my ass, and just like. But yeah, like how violent of a transformation it is. And every time he like de-transforms, he loses his clothes. I'm like, that's so interesting too, because it's very much more, I wonder is that how, I don't think that's how it operates, at least in the comics. Because at least from the TV show, I mean, from Young Justice, I don't remember. Like, I think it forms like Iron Man armor around you. Like, it's like nanotech, right? So I think it forms around you. But like, because I guess like, because it's embedded in, like, because my understanding is like the scarab is like on top of you and it embeds itself on you and it spreads out from there. But it seems like basically because it's skin level, it ends up burning through your clothes. Like it's a layer, it's layered onto your skin when it forms, so it's burning off your clothes and your shoes. But I just love that it's like every time he de-transforms, it's like, yo, I'm butt naked, you know? But yeah, like just kind of flying all over the place, being able to fly into space. Like once again, just the wonderment of just like, oh my God, this is happening. My entire life is being turned upside. Oh crap, I'm crashing. Oh, I'm good. This suit won't listen to me. Which I never knew his suit had. I mean, once again, I don't know enough about Jaime, and maybe this is something that was covered in Young Justice. Once again, it's been a while since I've seen those first two seasons, so do forgive me, but was it Khaji-Da? I believe. I'm probably butchering it. I did not know that was Becky G. I just happened to be looking at the cast now and was like, that's Becky G. Never would have pieced that together. But obviously it's kind of like like Jaime's version of like Jarvis or Friday, and probably more Friday to be exact. But I was like, I didn't remember that being a thing. Like, I think I knew that this scarab had its own will, but I don't know if that's something they did just for the movie, giving it like I mean, but once again, maybe like that's something that's even like canonical to the comics of like, it is like, it does have its own conscience and it does talk to Jaime in that regard. But not listening to him and is trying to protect him, because the whole point is they have a symbiotic relationship, that the longer the scarab is attached to Jaime, the more they're intertwined. I also love to, I'm a nut for story framing devices of like how long a story takes place. This whole story took place over the course of like maybe 2 days. Not even, like, I think it was 1 day. Like, it's kind of wild how much can go down. Like, I do think that's so... It's not like, oh, this is multiple days. It's like the moment Jaime got there, I'd say the entire movies took place over like 2-3 days at most, I would assume. So I think that's so interesting. But I like stuff like that when it's like knowing that a storyline is so condensed to like, oh yeah, this isn't taking place over the course of like a couple days, weeks, or months. It's like, no, it's only a couple days, like 2 or 3 at most. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that. I also like just talking about the villain really quickly, of just because I don't always get to see Susan Sarandon in the evil role. Like, the only time I've ever seen, I mean, I'm not well versed in her entire filmography, so I'm not always used to seeing her just being a straight up villain. And the only other time I've seen her in that capacity is in the show Ray Donovan, like in seasons 5 and 6, I believe. Like, you saw kind of like she's kind of willing to do whatever it takes. So I'm not used to seeing Susan Sarandon like that. She's kind of pure evil in this. It's just like, especially because she holds so much resentment, because her and her grandfather started this company, but when he died, who did he leave it to? He left it to Ted, which even his daughter Jen was kind of like, yeah, it's on some sexist stuff. It's like, yeah, even though she helped form the company what it was, he shifted things over, wanting the company to move away from the more weaponized side of things. But obviously when he went missing, she took over. They never really go into it, but I'm curious, like, did she have something to do with his disappearance? Or was it just, it seemed like it was probably something on his own end of things, just like a superhero thing that kind of maybe something he was working on kind of went haywire. We'll talk about that later on in the movie. I mean, later on in the discussion, but like I said, it's just like she's pure evil businesswoman. You could be like, okay, that's like so cliche, yada yada yada. But it's like the evilness and the cavalierness in which she's just kind of like, yeah, killed him, whatever. Oh, that kid, oh well, too bad. Kill the kid, get the scarab data we need. Kill the kid. Like, it's like, man, she's pretty hardcore. Really ready to like got an army showing up on some kid, like on someone's house, busting it up, guns pointing at a regular family for no reason, because she at the time didn't know I don't know if Home Dude had told her that Jaime had the scarab on. I mean, he at that time, Carapax had encountered Jaime with the scarab, so I don't know if he had already told her at the time. Like, she knew he had the scarab, but like didn't know he probably had it on him. She probably did, because it was like later on like, oh my god, it's so wonderful, so great, because it's all about perfecting the technology she's making, the OMACs, which are meant to be hey, you can have your, I'm sure she's going to plan on selling them to the government to be like, oh, like, we put our soldiers out there, but we put them in super suits, essentially. So she needs the final piece to the puzzle, which is the scarab. She's been looking for it for like 15 years. She had found it hidden somewhere, and I guess maybe Ted had hidden it, because Ted had examined the scarab, apparently. He never used it, and obviously because he's more like, oh, I just based all my tech and stuff around the scarab, but there was one person prior to him having the scarab. Because there's been 3, because he even saw the suits, because they reference, because I had to look it up to make sure, but they reference like a Dan Garrett, who was like the person who had like the scarab, Ted studied this person's scarab, the scarab's interaction with this person, Dan. Now, I guess like Dan died, because that's the only way you get the scarab off of you, so he's dead in this universe, but Ted never like took the scarab, he just became his own. I don't know if that's typical with Dan, because it might have, because like I said, there's 2 suits, and one of them is what Dan wears in the comics, I think, and one is what Ted wears in the comics. So, not unless they were both, because there's like 3 suits there, so that's why I'm like, and because later on, Jenny's staring at one of them, so I'm wondering, like, she never really talked about how much she knew about what her father was doing. Like, she had an idea about him doing the superhero thing, but I'm curious, like, was the plan for him to eventually, was she planning on, or rather wanting to accompany him and become like a hero as well? Because there was like a third mannequin that didn't have anything on it. So But that's probably just representative, like, that's the suit he had with him when he disappeared. That's probably all there is to it. So in this, all those suits are probably all Ted's. Dan never became like the Blue Beetle in the same capacity that Ted did. He was borderline in becoming it like Jaime did. We still don't know what, like, they just kind of like he died, but we don't really know all of Dan's story, like, because we just know the Scarab does choose people. It shows Dan just like it ended up choosing Jaime. But I do love that they kind of touch on like a complicated nature of being a hero, because I mean it's Jenny lost her mom when she was young, and then like her dad, because her mom kind of showed Ted to kind of view the world in a different way. But the moment she died, what did she do? What did he do? He basically kind of invested himself only in his work. So I don't think he was really much of a father to her, especially probably after losing her mom rather than being there for her. She said like, right, he'd be gone for days, maybe even weeks on end sometimes. That's because he's doing the superhero thing. And so I think when he just finally never came back and disappeared, it made it that much harder. It's like, you were the last person in this world, because she has no family. Like, all she has is Victoria, but Victoria has her own ambitions, because Victoria's drowning in resentment of, right, this is something I built, my brother came in here and turned it into something it's not, and I'm gonna take it back. And it's just, because even Jaime was like, oh, it doesn't seem like she was the way she is now, doesn't seem like she was like that back then. Because I think her and her grandfather kind of made it into the weapons manufacturer that it was, but then like Ted moved it away from that, and the moment she got that control, she moved it back towards that. So, you know, I think because it meant so much to her then, and I think she's doing so much to prove herself now to just try and correct the mistakes, because apparently the business was on the verge of collapse, because I think for Ted, he was so focused on saving the day, being a hero, and his inventions and stuff, that he kind of let the company lax. You know, in the DC vein, he's very much like Batman, except I think Bruce kind of handles, or at least has people around him that helps handle the Bruce Wayne Enterprises of it all versus like the Batman of it all, like finding that middle ground, which sometimes he struggles with it. I mean, that's the beauty of like the superhero thing of like heroes, those who find the balance and those who don't. I haven't talked about it yet, but I do enjoy and love the way the Blue Beetle suit works. Like I said, it's nanotech, but I love like, and they really did a great job of showcasing like, because, I mean, I never correlated, but it's like, yeah, the Scarab is kind of, in its own right, kind of like a lantern's ring. Once again, it's based on, like, your imagination. And so, like, whatever Jaime can think of. I mean, the suit already has its predisposed things of, like, oh, I'm going to do the cannon things. I'm going to do the blade things. It's also kind of like, oh, we're in kill mode, like, all the time. And like, oh, Carapax is an issue. Let's put him down. But for Jaime, it's like, no. We're not going to do that. I'm not a killer. Didn't stop Carapax from, like, almost, like, curb stomping him and killing him and killing Jenny and Rudy, but it's like kind of saying like, right, your family makes you weak, which is so interesting because we know that early on Victoria had this conversation with Carapax being like, oh, you're you saying like, right, like everything we've sacrificed, because it's like, right, you were because of my tech and everything, you're still around. And we find out later on, like, right, he stepped on a landmine and was on the verge of death, but Victoria saved his life and kind of rebuilt him, kind of almost the, what is it, $6 billion man? It's in the first trailer, obviously, like the big sword, which I forgot who it was. I was watching someone who referenced it, kind of like the Buster Sword, which I was like, definitely gives me Buster Sword vibes. But I think I didn't realize Jaime can make, I wonder, is that something they did just for the movie, or like he could sit, like, because I always associate his weapons with being attached to him, like the little hand blades he make. It's like, because they're like, they are connected to his actual hands, or like, hey, he turned his hand into giant maces or a hammer or cannons. It's always connected to, like, that sword he did was disconnected from, which I thought, I guess it's like, it can material, like, I wonder, is that something they just did for the movie, or is that even true to the comics? Because like, more often than not, when I've seen Blue Beetle do stuff, it's always directly, like I said, it's like nanotech, but maybe it's like, once you formed it, the nanotech flows from the suit and then creates the thing in front of you. Like, maybe that's all you really need to it. So it is all kind of nanotech, so it can flow away from the suit. Maybe the suit just replenishes what's taken away, because it just kind of like rapidly rebuilds itself, because it kind of has its own like healing factor. And because the more it fuses with Jaime, the more of a healing factor it gives him. So it's such a cool like obviously suit and capabilities, and how I love how they do utilize it, because obviously it's a lot of like blasting and slashing, but even like later on when he has that action sequence, it's very grounded of just like, yo, like I made some maces, I made a hammer, and I'm like going full melee in this, like we're doing close quarters combat type of situation when he was going up against those Cord people. And I just thought that's such a dope scene, and just like seeing how he like whoops everyone's ass in that moment. And obviously I touched on the family aspect of it, but like the fact, like I said, that is such a charming and beautiful aspect of the movie, to the point, like I said, it's just like how they are his biggest fans and his biggest supporters. And, you know, obviously him and his sister bust balls. She's always the one trying to, like, their family's got the whole bit about like, no, you don't tell Jaime anything, because even when you tell people good news, it always comes off like bad news. And she's like, see, I told you Jaime would be able to handle that without kind of basically losing it or freaking out. Later on, trying to tell him about the scarab, and it's like, I tried to tell him like how mutated and disgusting that looked. And I love like when he has his shirt up, everyone's like, yo, what if you like, oh my god, put that away, I forgot how gross that was. And it's like, and even Ruby like, no, it's not that bad, I've seen worse. And it's like, where have you seen worse? And he's like, you don't want to know. They are like, that family dynamic is like, it's very Shazam like, because I will always associate like Miss Marvel and Shazam are to me the two superhero properties I think have really done a great job of leaning into the family dynamic. Those are some of my favorite aspects of like Miss Marvel or a Shazam. It's just like that family element, because it kind of, especially in Shazam, it kind of took me by surprise, like how heartfelt and beautiful that was. It's like, right, it's not the family you didn't see, the family that you were looking for ended up being right in front of your eyes instead of the family you were looking for. That was kind of the message of Shazam. I'm butchering it, but like this was like, no, your family's been there beside you the entire time. I mean, everything Jaime did was motivated because he wanted to help out his family. You know, they're important to him. It's like, I got to look out for them. You know, wanted to get a job to take care of them. And so that moment, I was like scared, like when his dad was having a heart attack, I was like, please don't die. And they're trying to resuscitate him, but he doesn't. I was like, no. And especially because the heartbreaking thing is like, Jaime doesn't get those final moments with his dad. Like, you know, and who knows how conscious his dad really was in the end, but it's like Jaime was being taken away just as his father's dying. It's like, that's heartbreaking, you know? And that line from his nana, like from his grandmother, I thought was like, right, we need to go get Jaime back and tell him this is no time for tears. We can cry later. I was like, dude, like I had those moments, those powerful moments really hit me, like, because I don't like crying in front of other people. So I was starting to well up tears. I was like, Jesus, like there was literally like the row I was sitting was full. So like there was people on both sides of me. So I was like, I gotta keep calm. And like, I don't want to cry in front of people. I even heard someone joking beside me. It's like, it's okay to cry now. And they're like, shut up. But it's like, it's very beautiful and emotional. Like, I think they did such an amazing job, like hitting those emotional beats and for it to matter to you, because you want Jaime's family to be okay. But it's also that sad tragedy of like, loss is kind of what pushes, you know, it's protagonist 101. Like, you know, your loss ends up propelling you forward. Those lessons end up making you the better hero. It helps you grow and become stronger. And so, you know, and that family coming together in that moment, despite what they've lost, it's like, right, we ain't got time to cry. We got to go get Jaime. And I love that his nana is like ready with the gun later on. It's like, well, how do you know how to do that? It's like, I'm going to have to tell you about your grandma's like revolutionary days. It's like, what revolutionary days? And even later on when she's just kind of like going full at it, unleashing the Gatling gun and laughing like, oh, taste that, you damned imperialist. And Jaime's just looking like, what the hell is going on? And she's like, all right, come on, let's go. And just so, once again, cavalier about it. She's the one that suggested like, oh, we could go through the tunnels and stuff like that. Like, I've been through this before. And it's like, wait, when have you done this, Grandma? You know? I love that Milagro kind of has like what is... When I saw it, I immediately thought of the Fistigons from the Runaways, Chase's Fistigons. Obviously, those like more so blast, but like the way it kind of does a little bit of like projection fist and shield, once again kind of gave me like Lantern vibes, but it felt like a Green Lantern ring combined with a Fistigon. Even though this is PG-13, they don't shot, I mean, I think I'm sure once again, I don't know the full capacity. It's just everything you can get away with from the PG-13. I would, first and foremost, they did not shy away from like, oh no, there are people that died in this. Like some of those Cord people die. Like especially when the blue Beetle mobile or whatever its name actually is ended up going in beast mode and it was crawling and like its legs at one point it stepped on a dude and the guy stuck on it and you see it like wiggle its leg to like kick the guy's dead body off. I was like, that's brutal. And then later on, quote unquote Dr. Sanchez, like I said, if Sanchez is actually his real name or just the name that I'm blanking. I think it was just the one that, like I said, Victoria called him. But you know, he kind of, I mean, he had a conscience about it the entire time. Like the moment they captured Jaime and just saw the destruction that was left in the wake, he felt bad, and he's like, right, I'm just doing my job. I just, you know. But it's like, it wasn't till the very end that he was just kind of like, no, this kid, go protect your family, and ended up saving Jaime and ended up getting brutally murdered for it. It's like blood splattered on a window, and it was like, God, I was kind of hoping Home Dude would kind of make it out. It was like, but the way that was set up, I was like, he's about to die. And that, but circling back to like family stuff, like that beautiful moment that Jaime had with his dad. Now that scene, I don't know how to fully interpret that. Now, whether that is like this moment of like, you're in this drained state that you're kind of, you know, they talk about dreams being that, or like, what's the phrasing I'm looking for? That lane between, maybe some lane between life and death, kind of dream and death. Like I'm butchering it, but like maybe somewhere in the middle of that, Jaime ended up meeting his dad. But part of me was almost wondering, could it be the AI of the Scarab? Could it have like done that because it's like, this is what Jaime needs? So how much of that was really happening and like Jaime's brain just doing that, or how much of that was the Beetle like communicating with him, telling him what he needed to perk himself up? Now they kind of kept that ambiguous, so it's unclear because this Beetle was around enough to hear everything, to hear Jaime's conversations with his dad and his uncle, to really know like him and kind of get to know his family. And even later on when his mom is like, hey, you take all that pain of what you're feeling right now and you do what we do. We take that pain and we turn it into strength. You go in there and you kick their asses. And I really love that Khaji-Da, but I love that she also started speaking to Jaime in Spanish too, like when they're doing that final section and fight. I was like, oh, that's really dope, because once again, they are becoming one. So it's like, right, it's like I'm communicating with you in this moment. And I thought that was so beautiful. And him going up against Carapax and like being once again that moment that, oh, you're down but you're not out moment, and just him getting so pissed because he thought Rudy had died and let loose on the dude and was beating the ever living snot of him and wants to kill him, but Khaji-Da's the one who ended up making him stop. And it's like, we are not killers. It's like how much she's grown and changed, where it's like, okay, she had her own free will, was doing her own thing, but now that they're melded, it's like, we are a team. I've got your back, and we aren't killers. Like multiple times being like, okay, he's been stop, we don't have to kill him, but it's like, no, he needs to die. What about my dad? What about my uncle? But stops him, because when Victoria was doing what she was doing, siphoning the code from the Scarab, Khaji-Da ended up connecting with Carapax, and now we find out about his story once again. And I love they did in reverse order, because we saw that locket. I was like, oh, is that his wife and child? Is that what ended up getting sacrificed? You know, that Victoria was like, oh, we all sacrificed so much. Turns out he, once again, like I talked about it earlier, how he got injured and how Victoria ended up saving him in the first place. But then like we kept rewinding, like the what was it? He was a child soldier, and Victoria kind of picked him up, and like she saw someone that she could use, and even like how his mom died because of like Cord Industries. Like he's a victim of Cord Industries in so many capacities. Cord Industries developed the weapons that were used to that blew up his house and killed his mom, and that, you know, kind of made him into what he is now, like, you know. And like, because Victoria took him as a kid, and it's like, I don't know, maybe that wasn't him as a kid, as a soldier, but she picked, that might have been when he was an adult and after he stepped on a landmine and got blown up. Maybe that's when she was like, okay, but I feel like, and maybe I misremember, but I thought in the movie that was like at one of the sequences where he was like a younger kid. So, but I don't think Victoria's had him in her life that long. I think it most likely was after he got blown up of like, yeah, you owe me because I took care of you. And like all that we've sacrificed is like, what have you actually sacrificed, Victoria? We don't actually know. That's why I feel like maybe there's some element of maybe she has something to do with why Ted's gone. But either way. And in that moment of just, despite your anger, showing mercy and him telling that line, it's like, you said my family is my weakness, but they're what gives me my strength, you know? And because Carapax now remembers, I guess maybe because of the trauma of it all, if it wasn't for the scarab, like it wasn't just Jaime being able to see that, I think in that moment he was able to see it too, of like that vision of like, not vision, but like his memories. He's like, I remember it now, because I think so much of that was buried because of pain and trauma. Like he did not have an easy life, you know? Doesn't justify what he's done, but he was made into kind of like this Frankenstein monster. You know, Victoria is like Frankenstein in this regard. Maybe that's even supposed to be some parallel when it's like, well, Victor Frankenstein, Victoria. I'm probably reading too much into that, but he was kind of like her monster in that regard. So I think there was a little bit of that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein going on with that storyline. Like, cause I think for him, I think it's meant to be this parallel of this conversation about purpose. Jaime's dad was talking about like, hey, like you need to find your purpose. He's like, even at my age, I'm still trying to find my purpose. And Carapax, I think, never really had his own purpose either. So he just kind of went along, like I think as a good soldier, probably like having lost bits of who he was when he was kind of rebuilt by, Victoria. I think he became her soldier. He became her monster. And in that moment, it's like his humanity came back. It's like, right, your family, like and it was a sentiment that Jenny had as well, where it's like, you're lucky because not everyone has that where they're close with their family. And like, because Jenny grew up in a house so alone because her mom died when she was young and her dad was just never around, and not very close with Victoria, obviously. And even though Victoria tried to be like, yeah, this is our legacy, this is our family thing, but it's like, blood means nothing in this regard. I mean, blood means, in their case, it means nothing, but for Jaime and his family, it means everything. It's like that kid from the outskirts of Ed City, that kid knows more about family than you ever will, Victoria, Because it's selfishness about what she feels like she was owed and what she deserved that motivated her, not I'm doing this for my family. Because for Jenny, it's like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm trying to protect other families because she feels responsible for bringing the Beetle into Jamie's life. Not to Jamie, Jesus. Jaime, Jesus. Bringing it into Jaime's life because it's like, right, his dad ended up dying as a byproduct of all that. He wasn't in the best. He already had a heart attack before all this, and just the stress of everything going on just elevated that. And Carapax, saying that it's like, because in her mind is like, Victoria's like, oh, we're going to make the world a better place. And for him, it's like, the way to make this world a better place is to like kill her and make this all die with her. So he ends up making his suit go critical and he blows himself up, Victoria, as well as destroying all of the OMACs that were in design because she'd already mass produced so many just ready to kind of go. Because the code had already been destroyed by Jenny, but who knows how much of that was already uploaded into those, because they were connected to Jaime when they were downloaded the code. So she probably had a backup already. Like the main one was on that device, but it might have already gotten transferred to all those OMACs. So it's like, might as well wipe those off the board. So, and even that moment of like the parallel of the moment Jaime had with his dad, Carapax has with his mom being like, it's time. It's your time now. It's like, it's time to finally come home. There's a lot of sadness in this movie. Like I said, it's just like, it's this heartbreaking thing, and just the family all together at the end, and it's like, oh, we're together, and then it's like, now we can cry, and them huddled up, holding on to each other, and even bringing Jenny into the fold, because it's like, you're just as much as family in this regard too, of like, it's over, we can finally cry. And it's like, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. It's like, it's one of those moments that just kind of puts a pit in your chest. You're just like, ugh. Like I said, if I was by myself, I would have cried. I just didn't want to get like really teary eyed in front of other people. I'm weird like that. But Jenny ends up taking over Court Industries, and she's going to turn it back into what her father wanted it to be, the legacy that it was meant to be, and take things in a better direction. And try and, I think, help out the communities, especially at the end where the community that they're a part of, like Jaime's like families, like so many families in that community came together to help them, and they had gathered around a whole bunch of food, because their house got burned down in the aftermath of everything. But Jaime, believing what his father always said, like, well, the Reyes, we're going to be okay. No, not quite sure what the future holds, but I know it's going to happen. It's going to be okay, because even his father's like final words of like, I know it. He's like, now that I've gone, I'm now seeing the bigger picture, that I know what my purpose was. It was to basically be here with you now in this moment, because you were chosen. The universe knows that you were chosen for this moment, I'm also curious, like, how they're going to handle the secret identity element of it. I don't know how much that's a part of Jaime's stories in the comics. Once again, like, the movies have complicated that, because some movies lean into it and some others don't. Specifically, Marvel hasn't really leaned into the secret identity thing too much, only with certain characters, but like, because he transformed really publicly, like some of that stuff and you can skirt around because there's not too many people around, but at the end, the very ending of the movie, it's like, well, you're out on the street, there's a whole bunch of people around, you transform, like people see you in this suit, so they're like, oh, you're that guy? So I mean, at least Ted Cord, no one knew he was, because even Rudy was like, whoa, your dad was Blue Beetle? It's like, yo, like showing you how active he was, because it's like, oh yeah, that was back when you were a kid, so you might not remember it. So Ted must have like disappeared in the past like decade plus or something like that for like Jaime to not know him, so that because that meant he wasn't active. But it's like you were a kid when he was out and about, because Rudy likes him in comparison to like some other heroes like a Batman, because once again, like Batman's a fascist and everything. And I do like the teaser set up at the mid-credit scene of, okay, so like I said, Ted is still alive. He's trapped somewhere. But the moment Rudy booted up that computer at his like headquarters, that sent out a signal, and he was trying to, who knows how long ago that was. Like, it felt like a thing of like, okay, good, someone turned on a computer, let me, like, maybe it's like a message that was from a while back, like, okay, good, if you're getting this message, I let my daughter know I'm alive. So like, my understanding at the time was like, oh, like the moment the computer turned back on, he's like, oh, I can finally get through. But like I said, I don't know if that's like a recording that was already sent out there, but it was never received all these years, until he's like, okay, good, if you're hearing this, that must mean someone turned on my computer. Whoever you are, give this to my daughter. Because the signal was so scrambled, so I'm like, okay, we know the Scarab is a space thing. It's an alien thing. It's alien tech. So, once again, I don't know enough about the Scarab. Like I said, like I said, this is something they probably covered in Young Justice, but I don't remember enough, and I didn't fully explore that story because I haven't seen season 3 and 4. But so I wonder if his disappearance has something to do with the Scarab. Like, is he in space? Is he in another dimension? Like, where is he and how is he trapped? Like, what's the situation been like these past years? So, kind of set up in that regard. So, I know the movie has done. I mean, this is the second week, so hopefully it's done better. I know it didn't have the greatest opening, but I hope this movie ends up having legs, because like I said, I really enjoyed it. I know it's probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It might be a little too generic or plain for other people. I don't agree with that, but once again, to each their own, right? But I hope this movie, for one, gets greenlit for a sequel, especially if it, like, once again, I don't want just Jaime coming over. If that's all it gets, okay, I'll accept it. I'm fine with that, but I'd love for the entire story to be canonical to the DCU and make it so it's like, hey, let's take all these characters and continue Jaime's story. I mean, the point is, like, we're also getting a Booster Gold show, which apparently people have said, like, Booster Gold's relationship is typically with Ted, but I think probably more recent comics and more recent continuities have leaned into Jaime and Booster, because even the episode from Smallville was I mean, we didn't get too much of their interaction, but it's like, it's a Booster and Blue Beetle episode. I mean, specifically, it's a Booster Gold and Jaime episode. So it feels like that probably is a more modern comic thing. Like, the more traditional thing is probably him and Ted, but still. So that's why I'm excited to have Blue Beetle out more and about, just so we can have him interacting with Ted and get the Blue Beetle Booster Gold partnership that everyone's wanted for a while now, kind of live action wise. Because I'd love to see Jaime just interact with other superheroes and get to see him, who knows, we probably get something like a bit of a Young Justice Squad in the DCU or something like that. So I'm just hopeful, like, once again, James Gunn has been like, yo, the character Blue Beetle is going to continue on. So like I said, I hope it brings the whole continuity with them, but we'll see. Because I would love to pick up this story beat and thread with Ted, but like I said, who knows, like, how much of this is going to be like soft rebooted into the DCU and how much is just going to be like full on canonical. But like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I hope for a sequel and just continuation in the DCU and just being able to see Jaime in this like larger universe. Because this was like I said, it was a smaller scale story. It wasn't like we know the Scarab was like, they were like, oh, it's supposed to be like a world destroying thing. So once again, that ties into like where it comes from and why it was made. And it's going to be something we could explore in the future about where it comes from, really. And like I said, that might be where Ted's circumstances have landed him. But it's like, yeah, it's a big scale story in regards of just like the implications because of what Victoria wanted to do with like weaponizing stuff. But it wasn't like a world ending thing. It was a very like personal story, just a crazy circumstance you got dragged into, and eventually in the future it can turn into a more like cosmic situation as we explore more about the Scarab, Blue Beetle. So but yeah, I think that's kind of all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good